Hey, sixth graders. So we are back and we are going to be talking about Hinduism today. And we're going to finish almost all of page 73 in your workbook, in your SAM. And I will be giving you the information that you need to finish page 75 in your SAM. I will not write the information for page 75 on the board. I want you to do that on your own, but I will be giving you that information from this lecture, and then it's also in the book. So we left off yesterday with the definitions of Brahma, Brahman, and Brahmin. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Hinduism. I already told you that Hinduism is a pantheistic religion, which means that there are many gods, and all of those gods and all of us are part of a great world soul. When we're talking about other religions in the world, it's very important for us to remember that people who follow these religions believe it, and we have to be sensitive and careful about their beliefs. Of course, we believe in Christianity and we believe in Jehovah God, and we believe that that's true. And I believe that there's a lot of good evidence for Christianity, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be rude or ugly about other people's religions. So when we're studying world religions, it's very important for us to be respectful, even though we believe that it's a false religion. Having said that, we're going to talk about some things today that are a little bit, in the past, they've been kind of upsetting to some of my students. And so just understand that, and it may be a little bit weird or upsetting to you as we learn about some of the things that Hindus believe. Hindus are very, very concerned about doing their duty, doing their responsibility. This responsibility or duty is called dharma. I'm actually going to write dharma on the board so you can see how it's spelled, but it's not something that you'll need to write down on page 73. Dharma. Okay, you can see how that's spelled. Dharma is what you're supposed to do in this life. These are the ways that you're supposed to behave in order to be fully a part of Brahman, a part of the world soul. Most Hindus follow these different religious practices that they have very, very diligently. They are very concerned about it. And the reason they are concerned about it is, well, let's talk about ways first. So the Hindu religion has a specific way to worship, and they do that. They worship at their Hindu temples and their shrines. In fact, on page 127 in your book, you can see a photograph of the entrance to a Hindu temple. So this is just the entrance. It's actually pretty amazing and a beautiful piece of architecture. So they pray, they perform rituals, they worship at the temples, they bring sacrifices and money to the temple priests. And some Hindus are ascetic, which means they abuse their bodies or discipline their bodies in order to try to make their souls purer. And so they starve themselves, or they beat themselves, they'll seclude themselves in order to try and make their soul purer and closer to completely joining Brahman. They hope to be good enough to eventually be absorbed back into that world soul. Another part of Hinduism that's very important is the belief in reincarnation. This is the belief that a person lives more than once in different bodies. You could even be reincarnated as an animal. Now, being reincarnated as an animal is not a good thing. Okay, your state in reincarnation depends on what kind of karma you build up in this life. Now, you have probably heard people use the word karma, but I'm going to tell you that they're probably using it incorrectly. And it really bothers me when Christians use the word karma, because karma is a very specific religious belief to Hindus. Some people will, you might say, for instance, you might hear somebody, if somebody cuts you off in traffic and they're speeding, and then you see them get pulled over, and you might say, that's karma, except it's not karma. Karma is the result of your good deeds or your bad deeds. So in the life you're living, if you're a Hindu, you believe that in the life you're currently living, you build up good karma and you build up bad karma. So all the good things you do, following the Hindu religion properly, and any other good things that you do in your life, that builds up good karma. Any bad things that you do builds up bad karma. When you die, how you come back in your reincarnated next life depends on how much good karma you have built up. So many Hindus are very concerned about doing good works in order to increase their karma so that their next life will be a better one. This is really important, and I will talk about it again when we talk about the caste system. On page 128, you're going to read about the written scriptures of the Hindus. There's a written legacy called the Vedas, Vedas, and the Vedas are all of the sacred books of Hinduism. They are written in Sanskrit, and the word Veda is a Sanskrit word that means knowledge. The Rig Veda is the oldest, and it is a book that was dated around circa 1500 BC, 1500 BC. It is one of the earliest known books in human history. The Rig Veda, it has hymns and poems and prayers and talks about all of the rituals that that ancient Hindus performed and the philosophy of ancient Hinduism. It's also a really beautiful book. Ancient Hindus were very artistic, and they enjoyed art, and they enjoyed beauty. Some of the most beautiful poems come from this time period. Just some gorgeous songs and poetry. Even if we don't believe that, we can appreciate it as the work of art that it is. There's a later book that Hindus follow later called the Upanishads, which describes, gives more detail about Hindu beliefs and Hindu worship. Now, let's talk about families and castes. And this is where you're going to fill in some things on page 73 in your SAM, in your Student Activities Manual. This is where some people kind of, they get upset. And I think rightly so. It's a little bit sad, actually, to me. But like I said before, there are millions of people in the world who are Hindus, and they are good people made in the image of God, the same way you and I are, and we have to respect their freedom of choice, right, and their free will that God has given them. But we also pray for them and treat them with kindness and respect, no matter what they believe, because that's what Jesus has asked us to do. Now, in Hinduism, a person's relationship to the gods, remember they worship many thousands of gods, is very important. But relationship to other people is important as well. And we recognize that as Christians, right? We understand that our first responsibility is our relationship to God, but we also have responsibility toward other people. We have that small thing in common with Hindus. Now, because Hindus teach that everything is a part of Brahman, and your goal is to eventually be absorbed back into the world soul, the group is emphasized over the individual. So there are two basic social groups that form the basis for life and everything, really, in Hinduism. And those two groups are the family and the caste. C-A-S-T-A. Caste is how that's pronounced. Your caste is your social class. So your family is the people you're related to. Your caste is your social class. When the Aryans settled in India, they had large families. That was very common. It was highly encouraged. Families included, it wasn't just your parents and your children. It was grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles and daughters-in-law and any unmarried daughters. If you were a daughter and you married, you went to live with your husband's family. They would live in everybody on a piece of property. There would be a few different houses and everybody would live all together in those, on that compound. In ancient India, and to a lesser extent today, but still very true, the oldest man in the family had total authority over the rest of the family. Total authority. The oldest man in the family, so the granddad or the dad, had to follow everybody has to follow his orders. Obedience in the family is one of the duties that make up your dharma, make up your responsibility and what you need to do to become part of Brahman. The second group is the caste, like I said. Now, the castes are the social classes. Every person born is born into a caste, and you stay in that caste for the rest of your life. Hindus believe that the higher you are in the caste system, the closer you are to reuniting with Brahman. So your hope as a Hindu is that when you're reincarnated, you're born into a higher caste. There were 4 main caste divisions. I want you to look on page 131 in your book, and you will see the names of them. Remember, yesterday I told you that the priests, this book has them called the Brahmans, but I want you to think of them using a slightly different word, because that's what I've seen in the other books that I've read and studied, and that's the Brahmin, M-I-N. Okay, now this is the highest caste. Okay, the highest caste is the priests, or the Brahmin. They have a lot of power. Hindus believe if you're born into this caste, you are as close as you can get to being reabsorbed, to being reunited with the world soul, with Brahman. So the priests have a lot of power in India, in the Hindu religion. So if you are a member of the priestly caste and you die, unless you really blew it and have to be reincarnated again, if you were a good priest and you followed the rules and you did your dharma, you will be reunited with the world spirit, with the world soul. The next class down are the kshatriyas, the warriors, and the rulers. The caste below that is the Vaishyas, and those are the farmers and the traders and the artisans. And you remember that artisans are craftsmen, people who make things for everyday use. The lowest caste is the Sudras, and those are the laborers and the servants. Some ancient Indians then, and some Indians today, are considered outside the caste system. These are people who are called outcasts. In fact, I'm going to write this down because it's just out and then cast and then an S. And that looks very much like our word, outcast. If somebody is shunned, they're an outcast. We get our English word from this word, outcast. They're also called untouchables. The reason they are called untouchables is, you might remember in the Jewish religion, it's very important to be clean versus unclean. But Hinduism has some of those same things, and in some cases even more extreme. Anyone who works with meat, because Hindus are vegetarians, anyone who'd been expelled from their caste, unclean laborers, anyone who's non-Hindu is considered an untouchable. Every caste has rules for its members. In order to be a good caste, in order to be a good Hindu, you have to follow your caste rules. Whatever caste you're born in is the caste you die in. You do not move caste. A caste dictates who you can eat with, who you can marry, what kind of job you can have. It doesn't matter if you are super smart and super hardworking. If you're born into the Sudras, into the laborer caste, you can never be anything else. It was a very, very rigid society. The caste system still exists in India, although it's not quite as rigid as it once was. There are still very conservative Hindus who follow it very strictly. People in the upper caste have all of the power and have all of their needs met by people in the lower caste. Some people were really satisfied with their lives. Some people were not. Some people believe that the caste system keeps the Hindu society, Indian society running smoothly. And in a way, that's true, right? Everybody knows what's expected of them. And if everybody does their duty, then there's no difficulties and no arguments. But the thing is people aren't like that. Because they believe that if you're born into a caste, you did something to deserve that, because they believe in reincarnation. So if you see a little child on the street that's begging and they're in a lower caste, well, you don't feel any sympathy for that little child. Even though they're starving or they're hungry, you don't feel any sympathy for them, because you know that they must have done something really bad in their former life to be reincarnated in a lower caste. So you see how there's no sympathy, no forgiveness, and no grace in the Hindu religion, which is something that's really bothersome. Because if I were in a higher caste and I could walk by and I could see people suffering all around me, and I would not care, because they deserved that. Hindus believe that you're born into whatever caste you deserve based on your karma from your previous life. So you see how people, when I teach about Hinduism, and some of my students get really upset because of that. And so remember that we have to be compassionate, because if we believe that God loves all people, and we do, then we know that God loves Hindus too. And he wants them to come to a saving knowledge of the truth. And so when we encounter people who are Hindus, remember to show them the love of Jesus and to treat them with respect and dignity, no matter what caste they're in, because we know that that's how Jesus would treat them. Now, the next time we get together, we will be talking about another religion that began in this area, and that is the religion of Buddhism. There are some similarities to Hinduism and a lot of big differences, and I think you'll find that very interesting. So you should now have all of the information that you need to complete page 75. When we finish with Buddhism, you will be able to complete page 73. We just have a couple more questions on page 73. So I'm looking forward to that, and we will see you next week.